Good day, and welcome to a World of Warcraft video. In this video, I just wanted to talk about what I've really been enjoying about Dragonflight and what I think a lot of players have been enjoying about Dragonflight and why I feel a lot more positive about World of Warcraft now than I did at the end of Shadowlands. And there's a couple things for it, and I'm gonna just talk mainly. So if you're not into me talking, then maybe this isn't the video for you. It's also gonna be very subjective, but I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about everything. About Dragonflight, about everything in Dragonflight, and yeah, what you guys think is really interesting or enjoyable or fun. And yeah. But so, to start off with, I think one of the things, or one of the main things about Dragonflight is what I like to call the succession of good choices. Dragonflight was already built on the backbone of an incredibly good decision made by the WoW dev team to do some fundamental changes to the game's design. These changes were things I think that have been long overdue, changes that have been, let's say, necessary for a very long period of time. And that is talent trees. It is undeniable that the previous talent tree was not complex enough and also not interesting enough to convey the RPG mechanics that a lot of people long for in these games. When you want to do a build or when you want to look and do something in an RPG, generally the decisions you make are catered towards creating an identity or a playstyle that you associate with your character that you build in the game. I may be a demon hunter and I may be a demon hunter tank, but maybe I want to be a slightly different demon hunter tank to someone else. This creates a unique sense of belonging and responsibility to the character, and this engenders a feeling of personal investment into the character far beyond just the natural time sink investment that one has with MMOs. And WoW brought this back, and I think they did it very well. Obviously, balancing aside, some classes do need a bit of a rework. Some classes have had touch-ups already. I think the talent tree system has worked beautifully. Not only that, but it came with a whole bunch of different variable templates that you could build. The system is very well fleshed out from the very beginning. You can import other people's builds, you can save new builds, and it's very cool. I'll give you an example of why I think this system is so great. So in Heroic Vault of Incarnates, there is a fight against Dathia, and Dathia on Heroic will knock you to different platforms. She'll, kick your ass, basically. Now, this is quite a tough fight. When you get knocked to the ads, you have this really difficult proposition of trying to multiple target numerous smaller mobs that are spread out just a bit too far for your team to cleave them down. Now, a lot of classes have innate abilities that are naturally selected to deal with this. Me as Demon Hunter Tank, I don't have this. I don't have these capabilities. So this makes things a little bit more challenging for myself. But you can solve this through your talent tree, and talents can be changed at any time in the raid. And I'll give you an example. Here you'll see on this side of the tree, under the Vengeance talent, a really cool talent called Sigil of Chaos. Now usually I won't use Sigil of Chaos. It's not something that I use in my standard build for raiding. It's not something that I enjoy using in my standard build for raiding. So realistically speaking, it's not something that I want to utilize. It's not something that I want to have, basically, to cut a long story short. And maybe in just this scenario, for once, it was really important to have Sigil of Chains. And so I changed my build. I changed it fundamentally. I changed a couple things about it. It wasn't anything too crazy, but I made these changes. And yeah, you can save that as a build. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. And this, for me, is the greatest fundamental change to World of Warcraft and how World of Warcraft functions now, and how players feel about combat in World of Warcraft. Now, I can easily switch between variable builds that bring so much different things to my class. Now, for example, I can use Sigil of Chains, and that will pull all enemies together, which makes cleaving them down vastly easier, comparatively to the situation where I didn't necessarily have Sigil of Flames, and this caused a huge problem. You can see here, you can place it, you can use it, it's very, very, very good. So that makes the combat more exciting, obviously, which I think is the biggest fundamental building block of any MMO. You want your content to be fun, but without good combat, no content can be fun. It's not about whether that's by design or whether that's by functionality. Combat has to be enjoyable on a ground basis in MMOs, especially in tab targeting MMOs. Now, obviously, that fundamental change alone would not have been enough. The second very good fundamental change that they made was the change to the way the loot system worked. They've removed a lot of random modifiers. They've introduced the catalyst system early on into the expansion to allow players to control their sets. A lot of players will know, and I've done a video about the revival catalyst, the benefits that the revival catalyst brings, the ease in which it is to get currency for the revival catalyst, and this allows you to really control getting your 4-set bonus. Even for a player like me who plays very rookie numbers of hours, I think I play at most during a week probably 15 to 16 hours at most, and on average I'm probably sitting at around 8 functional hours when I'm not filming or doing things that are different. And these changes to loot, the way loot drops, the way loot scales around the world, you can do this Dragonbane Siege. There's so many quests now and world quests that it makes it easy for players to gear up through a very, very good pseudo kind of natural inclination and climb. I think this is very good. This enables people to really have a fantastic sense of progression and gives them a guideline or a method, if they're not someone who's familiar with World of Warcraft, to continue to improve. And I think that's incredibly good. You know, World Quest dropping gear up to 389, which honestly is literally entry level, like normal raiding level gear. Like you can almost skip normal raiding with 389 because enemies will drop 389 to 398. So that's very, very good. And I'm not saying it's good. It's not like it's going to teach them how to play the raid or do anything like that. I'm not saying it allows players to circumvent content, but the natural loot progression is much better. Another thing that also helps is they moved away from this idea of keeping you involved daily to keeping you involved weekly, which I think is a massive change in the core dynamic of World of Warcraft. Before, there were mechanics such as daily chests that would kind of almost hold players hostage. You were, by design, kind of forced to log in every day and check the area and which chest did I have in the bottom left hand corner, and okay, I need to go and do that chest, and if I don't do that chest, then I'm going to lose out on rewards, and then the chests expire, and it created a sense of having to log in. And although I love logging into World of Warcraft and I love doing content in World of Warcraft, having this pressure on you to log in every day always drains a player base. Now, things are different. The game has moved to a weekly format. Take, for example, the really cool mechanic of Grand Hunts. Okay, and we'll talk about these a little bit, but Grand Hunts are a fantastic bit of content whereby players can really engage in doing basically a series of events. It's like akin to Fates or World Quests in Guild Wars 2. And Grand Hunts are really fun, really enjoyable content, casual content for sure, but they're content that players can do and enjoy and really, really get to grips to. And this content drops rewards, of course, as you can see here, but the Maruk Grand Hunt spoils, they only reset weekly, and you can do them 3 times, and you get diminished scaling rewards each time. Yes, you can grind them for other benefits, such as reputation and small amounts of crafting materials, reputation, some gold, but the movement is that you can only do them X amount of times. That it has diminishing returns, and the main goal is to do it at least once a week, which is very, very important. Next is the Dragonbane Siege, incredibly similar event. Obviously, it takes place in the Waking Shores. You have the Cook, the Community Feast, again, also very similar. Exact same principle. Diminishing returns, a weekly event, something for you to do once or twice a week, get your rewards, and enjoy. A lot of the world quests are weekly based, such as races for the Dragonflight, which is fantastic. And that gives you a sense of being able to craft and play to your own direction. There's no pressure for you to consistently do everything. Yes, there's still weekend events, there are still weekly quests. These I think are fine. I've never had a problem with them giving you rewards for doing a certain amount of tasks during a week, but it was a shift from the daily grind mechanism, the daily grind enthusiasm, to a more weekly orientated one. And this suits a lot of players more. It allows you a lot more freedom and a lot more control. The next thing, and this is now moving away from fundamental mechanics, although I want to mention one last thing before we really get there, is professions. They still need work. This is not rocket science for a lot of people, but they are adequately trying to improve them. The specialization system, I think, is a fantastic system to implement that will reap benefits, maybe not perfectly now, but in future is a fantastic system for players to move into and for the game to move into. It allows a sense, again, of diversity and control. My friend can be an engineer, and I can be an engineer. I'm able to make braces, helmets, and a ton of great gear for players. He can make high-level tinkers that you can place in those gears. For me to catch up to him would take an insane amount of grind, and yes, it is possible to be a multi-skilled sub-specialization character. I'm not saying you can't do everything. People like to do everything. There shouldn't be a way to stop them from doing everything. But this profession here and this profession change is fantastic for the long run. Whether it's been implemented perfectly remains to be seen. I think the changes they made to fishing have been good as well. They've tried to give it some more diversity with harpoon fishing, net fishing. I do think there is a little bit of work to be done on cooking. I think they could make it more interactive. There are now some finishing reagents and ways to kind of spice up your meals, so to say, but I still think there is a little bit of work to be done. But the fact that this work has been done and the changes have been made has made crafting a lot more enjoyable. Work orders, that systematic stuff that they've added in does need to be changed, but like I said, the main principle of why Dragonflight is so much more fun to play is because of systematic, consistent, better decision making by the development team. Now let's talk about, obviously, Dragonflight itself and the content in Dragonflight. Well, I think the content in Dragonflight has been, for the most part, pretty good. I am a WoW lore enthusiast. I'm someone who foolishly gets into the lore of World of Warcraft, And I think this is a good enough dialed down scale of story that it feels kind of almost predominantly focused into the Dragon Isles, more so than like needing to be this cataclysmic Azeroth world scale event. It's still dire, it's still super important. There could be even worse repercussions down the line. There will be chaos across Azeroth should we not contain it. But it doesn't feel like we're fighting some insurmountable force, which I think is good. At least for me, I've never been a fan of this. I've never been a huge fan of the notion of world scale cataclysmic things in any MMO or even any story. I think it's always so like small, like an easy cop out, an easy change up of pace. So I think that's great. I think the story's been good. I'm not going to say it's anywhere near Final Fantasy standards. I don't think the game is designed to run that way. Final Fantasy relies a lot on heavy cinematics, heavy voiceover title changes, heavy amounts of discussion, heavy amounts of reading, character investment. Not to say that these are bad things. I love Final Fantasy, but the fundamental design of the games do not corroborate to each other. To change the story to be this way in World of Warcraft, this mandatory exercise, this kind of roadblock to progression wouldn't work with the progression-based fiends and alcoholics that you have in this game. Yes, things have been made easier, things have been made better for the player base over time, but a lot of these things cannot be fundamentally changed. But I think with what they do with the story and how they make things work, I think have been pretty good in Dragonflight. Beyond that, I think Dragonflight does a lot of things really well. I think, as mentioned before, the hunts are fantastic. I think the weekly events are really great. I think they're a lot of fun. I think the way they've handled daily quests, weekly quests, things like that, and even world quests have been really good. The opening up of the map early on, the introduction of Dragonflight, which we'll talk about now, but all of these changes, the early opening up of the map, the freedom of exploration, the treasures, the changes to crafting, the way everything's been implemented together, I think is fantastic. Look at this place. You don't get this experience in a lot of MMOs. A lot of MMOs are sectioned off. Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy, SWTOR. All of them feel very closed and encompassed. There are very few that have this huge sense of exploration. I think ESO is one of them, that where I felt like the whole world is opened up to me. And even that has instance areas, but very similar to WoW, like instance dungeons. ESO is probably the closest I've come to feeling the sense of open world exploration. But Dragonflight really nailed it. When you look at this, the way they give you dragon flying early on, and just the sense of this huge island of exploration. Each section is beautiful, and the WoW art team shines again. And I just think everything comes together really, really well. Let's talk about the obvious big mechanic as well, is dragon riding. It's huge. Not only is it huge fun to get all the unlocks in the beginning, but the unlocks feel powerful and potent, adding more vigor charges, faster vigor regeneration rates. All of them together make your flying experience go from something that requires a lot of skill management in the beginning to being this free-flowing, high in the sky, huge momentum-based, fast, fun travel system. I think the biggest issue with dragon riding is that it makes the rest of the game's flying and mount system seem so trivial in comparison. Very often for Mythic Plus, you will have to travel back to areas that are in older expansions, and to get onto those mounts and be unable to dragon ride them or even just using them in their standard travel method feels very underwhelming. So, yeah, I will say dragon riding is great, but the fact that it's absolutely crippled the rest of the game's flying for me has been a shocking experience from WoW's side. I think they should have seen that coming. I hope, and I hope mechanically it can happen. I hope they're able to introduce dragon riding, or at least the ability to ride dragons elsewhere. I hope they make a system similar with ground mounts. It would be lovely to have the ability to sprint or leap or jump beyond, the scope that they have. But I think in general, there is a lot of really, really good stuff with dragon riding, and I think it's really, really worked out to be fantastic. And yeah, obviously the rest of the stuff I think WoW did strong continues to do strong. I think Mythic Plus is still one of the best fun, small based instant group experiences that you can have in any MMO. I've played Final Fantasy right up till the end of the latest expansion, and it has very fun content, and the raids are fundamentally different to WoW's raid design. But I think the big thing for me is this joy of being able to do small instant based content with friends of mine in a fun and fulfilling way, which I think is really, really awesome and something I honestly just enjoy a lot. Um, so yeah, I really, really enjoy that. Uh, I think it's great. Now, obviously, you know, the raids, as I mentioned, are different. World of Warcraft continues its design philosophy of having mobs in every single encounter in the Age of Time. As a player who's played Final Fantasy and preference-wise hates the idea of mobs, mobs are not something I enjoy. They feel like unnecessary. Uh, it's like watching anime and getting filler between arcs. Like what killed Bleach? Filler. The same thing with World of Warcraft. Some mobs are interesting. Sub bosses I understand. But for the most part, a lot of them just feel like a massive springing of AoE damage that healers must heal through and people must cleave through. It doesn't feel very well fundamentally designed. Still, to this day, it's just a messy, unenjoyable, cumbersome experience. The actual bosses themselves have been really good. I've done the raids. I haven't finished Razageth yet, but I've done most of the raid on Heroic. And a lot of them feel really well designed. If I can speak plainly, oh, well, perfectly timed disconnect as we end the video, but hey, speak about it. But yeah, I think a lot of the raid bosses feel well designed. I think a lot of them are really well designed. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, Dragonflight has been a success through succession of great decisions. And if you haven't tried WoW, or you thinking, WoW's maybe changed or what the changes have been, all I can say is, as someone who left World of Warcraft 3 or 4 years ago and played Final Fantasy pretty much the whole way through, I've come back to WoW and I've really enjoyed it again. It's still World of Warcraft. It hasn't changed. If you're coming back to expect no mobs between bosses, or dungeons that don't turn into massive, horrible orgies of terrifying hazards and bad player decision making, don't come back to WoW. But if you enjoyed that and you're looking for a less weighed down, less overbearing version of World of Warcraft that strikes a good balance between what was really good in vanilla and what has improved with retail, I think Dragonflight's getting there. I genuinely think it's getting there. We didn't even touch on the trading post, but that's a fantastic addition as well. That has not harmed or in any way made me feel this uneasy need to play the game. I finished everything by the second day, and I was playing in like 3 hours. Like pretty much finished everything. They've really changed their philosophy. I truly believe they've moved from a daily to a weekly and monthly mechanism for retaining players, and that's what you need to do. So guys, thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure to make this video. It's a bit of a stranger one, but I wanted to, yeah, just wanted to try it. Just wanted to chat about it. But thanks so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Till then, take care, stay safe, and bye.